which were not so very much at that time, but being affiliated with Ezra Cunningham, which was very strong in civil rights movement, I automatically was branded as a civil rights activist. And of course, I had no objections to it because I knew that what was going on was rightfully what needed to take place, and if we were going to ever overcome that problem, somebody had to step up and help Mr. Cunningham, who had done a wonderful job in civil rights movements. And anytime anybody was branded at that time as being in association with Ezra Cunningham, you became a hitman all of a sudden. And of course, I was well aware of that when we took on this position. We didn't just start that way, but it started kind of accidentally. As I started off saying, I was in college at that time with his nephew. I think it's his nephew, Charles. He used to come up on weekends and pick us up and bring us home free. So naturally, we became appreciative of the services that he was giving us. And he didn't have to take us back. We could always get back on our own. But every weekend, most weekends that we wanted to come, he was available to get us home and back if we had to use him. He was very open-hearted, and we began to appreciate him as a leader and as an associate and even as a relative, because Charles was his nephew, and of course he treated us both the same, so I began to think of him as an uncle of mine, just like Charles did. But this is basically what got me involved, because later on Charles left the county. But when I graduated from college and got a job here, I began to still affiliate and associate with Ezra, because I recognized that what he was doing was worthwhile, and it was certainly something that was uplifting my people, not only in Monroe County, but in the state of Alabama and in the South. So this is basically what got me involved into the civil rights movement. And as a result of my affiliation with him, and as I mentioned, that we started off teaching at Tunnel Springs, and of course, at that time, it was just not popular for a teacher or a person employed by the Board of Education to be active in the NAACP and other civil rights organizations. But at the same time, we never let that deter us, because we knew the value of what those organizations could do toward moving our people forward. So we naturally participated, and of course, as expected, we eventually lost our job as a result of that. And of course, we were out of the teaching business for 10 years, but we continued to perform and work seriously with the civil rights movement. And of course, we filed a suit against the Board of Education for the unemployment. And after 10 years of unemployment, our suit was considered, and the court ruled in our favor. And of course, we were paid for 10 years, back pay, and reemployed and given a position as principal in Monroe County, which we served diligently for the rest of our active term, and we retired as a principal in this county. And life in general was at first difficult. My wife and family was very close, and we worked as a team, and we were able to survive. She, of course, had a perfect job and helped and took care of many of the obligations that we had. And we fortunately, and thank God for that, we never lost any property or any funds or anything that we had so far as making a decent living was concerned. And we had owned a couple of houses and lots, which we still maintain until this date. And it was a blessing from God and assistance from our friends and organizations, especially NAACP, Beat 10, Alabama New South, and all the other organizations that we have been affiliated with that kept us above the water. And we're grateful for our opportunity to have had an opportunity, rather, to work with Brother Cunningham, because he was truly the backbone of the civil rights movement in Monroe County in particular.
Ms. William, in your relationship, being supportive of Mr. William, give us a little taste of what that was like to knowing that dealing and fighting in the issues of civil rights. I'm going back to Mr. H.B. William, third from the left here in the picture, where he was activist in the first civil rights NAACP organization here at Monroe County. That was back in 1963. Being supportive of him and his endeavors and what he was out there doing, tell us a little bit about what that was like, so far as in the family structure and keeping the kids and knowing that he was out there on that road or dealing with situations where our white brothers was not pleased with what he was doing.
Going back to those days, I say, it wasn't easy. It was never easy. But we had a close relationship with God. I guess that was the main thing, the main issue that kept me strong and our family strong, because all of this was going on. Yes, we had to tell our children these things was happening, but they didn't understand it. But they stood with us too. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It was very fearful and scary. A lot of people don't believe that, because working with civil rights is a dangerous game, to me. And you don't know when they're coming after you. The one thing that came to my mind, but we stuck together. We had to stick together, because it was a promise that whatever my husband went through, we had to live through it. Whether we done without a lot of things, of course, you know, but that was part of the movement. Mm-hmm. We had to suffer. Yes, we did. It wasn't easy, but like he was saying, we had a lot of good friends that came to our rescue and helped us while we was going through our struggle, and our parents was right there for us too. And that's another thing that really helped us, that they were there for us. They never turned their backs on us. They were scared like everybody else, you know. But in our overall, we discussed it. We had to discuss a lot of time. I was not told of things that was happening, but sometimes I get it from other people. Mm-hmm. But then I had to, you know, ponder it in my heart, as the Bible said, until it blew over. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that kept us there, we knew that one day this thing would be over, which it will never be over now, you know, because it's still moving today. Mm-hmm. And to me, I feel like it's worse, but we are not by ourselves anymore. But like everybody's involved in this movement thing, so we hanging in there and we have had a lot of prayers and staying on God's side, and that's what kept me strong.
In 1950, when the state of Alabama outlawed the NAACP, can either one of you, especially you, Mr. William, talk about that, the fact that you all had established the NAACP chapter, and you all, this picture that we looked at earlier was taken over there in Packers Bend, which was across the river. Can you remember in 1950 what that was like, knowing that you all were part of an organization that the state of Alabama had outlawed?
Well, yes, it really was a problem, but then on the other hand, it, it just created a detour type of program that we had. We realized that even though it wasn't legal that operated in the state, but it had established a mindset, and particularly with Harold Cunningham and Frank Marshall and James Marshall and several others of our leaders, Lil Bumpers and a bunch of them over in the Packers being able, that we realized that with the name of the NAACP or not, we had personal obligations to carry on as if it was still in existence. And it didn't really stop our activity. It just stopped us probably for a moment from using the name of the NAACP. But in our hearts, we knew that we were still operating, we were still functioning, we still were doing the things that was necessary to do to keep our people officially organized and working in the various communities all over the county. And even like I said, we not could have operated under the name, but we still kept the activities going. We had groups like Monroe County Leadership Action Committees, Beatrice Action Committee, and various different other committees that were born out of the fact that the county and state had kind of abandoned the NAACP, but in our hearts, we still were NAACP, and our activities were still motivated in the same way that it had always been when it comes to the operation of civil rights, because we knew that things were not what they should have been, and that unless somebody stepped forward and started a movement, then it would never get there, because it was necessary that we organize and get the county memberships together, and people who were thinking in one mindset. And I'm so appreciative that a lot of other names, I don't think we'd have time to go to call them all, but in all of the communities we had leadership organizations, Monroe County Leadership Action Committee, and we had groups all over the county that work diligently to keep this movement going and to bring it forward to where it is today. I dare not mention the fact that there was, even though it was a racial problem, but I can truthfully say that there were a lot of whites, that some secretly and some openly, that encouraged us diligently, because they too recognized the fact that it was not right and that they couldn't do it, but they could support us when we stepped out there and started to moving on it.
Okay. And by the way, the vice president of that first 1963, well, prior to that, vice president was Mr. H.B. Williams. Mr. Willie Frank Marshall at that time was the president.
Right.
I can remember from my early days of my mother, as well as a lady that passed today, Miss Easley, and some old ladies here in Beatrice. They would sell over at the community center hot dogs, hamburgers, anything that, sausage, sandwich, whatever. For whenever you guys was out on the road, especially Mr. Cunningham, they would sell,
right,
so that they could go to black hotels or wouldn't have to stop at the restaurants and eat. Those were people behind the scenes.
Oh yeah.
Ms. Nana, do you recall at any time in the past when those ladies would, I can remember as a kid running around, they would be up there at the center selling stuff, and there wasn't no free stuff. You had to have a dime, a nickel, something. You had to come up with something to get some of that food, because that money was going to go to y'all for y'all travel when y'all was out there on the road. Well, first, Mr. William, what was that like to know that these women in this community and I don't know about down there in Monroe or down there where y'all live, but I know about up here in Beatrice, would get together and cook